Okay, welcome back, everyone. Our topic for today is going to be the Lincoln-Douglas debates. So if you've been paying attention at all to our morning announcements in the last week, they've constantly been mentioning the Lincoln-Douglas debate team that we have at our school, and it's named after these very famous debates that take place right before the Civil War in the 1850s. So it's probably the most famous debates in American history. The only ones that probably rival it are the first televised debates between Kennedy and Nixon. So let's kind of jump right into it and see what these debates are all about and what makes them so famous. Um, so, so the first thing is that this is going to be debates in Illinois for the Senate race. So it's the 1858 Senate race between Stephen Douglas, who's the Democratic candidate, and Abraham Lincoln, who's the Republican candidate, which is a relatively new party at the time. So the central focus of the debates is going to end up being slavery. And it really ends up being slavery because Abraham Lincoln wants it to be slavery. He's going to try and box Stephen Douglas in on his ideology and his views about slavery because Stephen Douglas has, obviously he's instrumental in the Kansas-Nebraska Act, but he also agrees with the Dred Scott decision, which kind of helps Lincoln to kind of box him in because in a lot of ways they're contradictory to each other. So these debates, they're going to take place throughout the state of Illinois in 8 different locations. And so combined by traveling to all of these different locations and throughout Illinois, in this Senate race, they're going to make hundreds of different speeches, Lincoln and Douglas. So these are the 8 locations of the famous debates that take place. Now, these debates are really interesting. So a lot of you guys are probably thinking in your head about the presidential candidate debates that you watched this year. But these debates are very different than those debates that we saw between, the candidates this year. These debates were kind of all-day intellectual affairs, basically. You're going to have 6 hours of the people that went to them kind of looked at them as entertainment. I mean, Lincoln and Douglas, they're going to talk for an hour at a time, and then they're going to get a half an hour for rebuttals. And the people, think about what it means as far as their society then and our society now. The people who went to this found this as, they looked at it as entertainment. It was interesting to them. They enjoyed it. It was exciting. It's almost like going to a sporting event for them. And they would cheer and, applaud different things that the candidate said and kind of call out and get involved in the debates. So to them, this was enjoyment. Not boring, not uninteresting, not I have to sit here and listen to this guy speak for a half an hour. They loved it and they could follow. These were very intricate arguments that Lincoln and Douglas were making up here. And one of the things that I find so interesting about this is that at one point, Douglas makes a point and then Lincoln gets his chance to rebuttal. And they only give him a half an hour, to respond. And Lincoln apologizes to the crowd because he says he didn't have enough time to fully explain his ideas the way that he wanted to. So think about our presidential debates. They only get 2 minutes to speak, and then 30 seconds or a minute rebuttal. It's so different, and you really can't explain any kind of in-depth intellectual argument in 2 minutes. So this is kind of the nature of the debates and what it was like to kind of actually attend these debates. Now, Douglas's position. His position we talked about in class already pretty substantially. To him, he says it does not matter if slavery is right or wrong. Morality is not the issue to Douglas here with slavery. What he says, it matters not what way the Supreme Court may decide as to the abstract question of whether slavery may or may not go into a territory. The people have the lawful means to introduce it or exclude it as they please. So, like we've been saying in class, Douglas's main ideology that he's going to hang his hat on is popular sovereignty here. He's going to say it is the people's choice. It is a democracy. If the people choose the morally wrong thing, well, the people chose it. Democracy works by majority rule, and it's their decision to make. And so what he says is, if the law is contrary to the people's will, it should not be followed. Basically saying the people's will should guide it, and they don't have to follow these things that they see as unjust laws. And if unjust means excluding slavery, then they shouldn't follow that law. Now, Lincoln, on the other hand, is a very different opinion. He's going to say slavery is a moral, social, and political wrong. So it's wrong in kind of every aspect that you look at it. And what he's going to say is the Republican Party looks upon it, meaning slavery, as being a moral, social, and political wrong. And one of the methods of treating it as a wrong is to make a provision that it shall grow no larger. So when you look at this, what you want to pay attention to is what does Lincoln say and what does he not say. So what he says is free soil, basically. No slavery extended to these new territories, that it shall grow no larger. He never says we're going to abolish slavery completely. We're going to get rid of it in the places that already have slavery. He's thinking about the Western territories and no more extension of slavery. Um, and Lincoln is going to say you have to uphold the law of the land. If the Missouri Compromise was the law of the land, then the Kansas-Nebraska Act should not have been passed. It should be, illegal. The law is the law, and you should uphold the law. Now, Lincoln's famous speech that he gives during these debates, it becomes known as the House Divided speech, and it's debatable whether this is his most famous speech or it's not. But it really foreshadows the Civil War. So what he says here is a house divided against itself cannot stand. I believe this government cannot endure permanently half slave and half free. I do not expect the Union to be dissolved. I do not expect the house to fall, but I do expect that it will cease to be divided. So let's think about what Lincoln is saying here. He's saying the country cannot keep going on half divided, kind of in this farce that we're going on through the 1840s and the 1850s. He says we're going to have to choose as Americans, what is our ideology? Are we going to be a pro-slavery country? If we're going to be a pro-slavery country, we have to be entirely pro-slavery. If we're going to be a free country, we have to be entirely free. So he really does shows his view and his understanding of the country. He sees what's coming down the line, and he's right. The country is going to have to choose whether we're going to be, totally free or totally slave. And we end up, thankfully, choosing to be totally free. But it's going to take a war to kind of make everybody accept that.